The House with a Clock in Its Walls is a kind of like a scary children's film, kind of like a children's horror film, directed by Eli Roth. Now, wait a minute. I know what you're thinking. Wait. Hold on. Eli Roth, the guy who directed the guy who directed Hostel, where tourists got were chopped up for fun, and The Green Inferno, where a whole bunch of travelers were eaten up by cannibals, and even he did a film this year called Death Wish. The new Death Wish with Bruce Willis, who went around shooting up people and spilling blood and guts and cracking open skulls on the streets. Eli Roth, that guy, is directing a children's film. Now, a children's horror film at that. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, so Roth is gonna go nuts with this. You think he's gonna go crazy with the gore? It's like, I don't want my kids seeing an Eli Roth film. He's a little creepy guy. But here's the thing. Roth has kind of actually reined himself in for this. He's not the usual kind of gorehound he is for this film. He's actually made, he stays right on track to make a kind of a decent kind of haunted house film for kids. But I think that might be the problem too. Hey, how you doing, Frozen Blossom? But I think that might be the problem with Eli Roth's Death Wish. Not Eli Roth's Death. The House with the Clock in Its Walls. I don't know why I keep forgetting that title. So yeah, the House with the Clock in Its Walls is essentially, I've kind of described this as like the homeschooled Harry Potter. You have this newly orphaned kid, Lewis. He's a smart kid of the 1950s, and he goes to Michigan to live with his uncle Jonathan, played by Jack Black. Now, he doesn't know too much about Jonathan, other than that he lives in a creepy house, and that he's kind of like the ultimate kid's fantasy of an uncle. There's no bedtimes, you don't have to do homework, and there's there's huge freshly baked chocolate chip cookies for every meal. Like, not even, you don't even have to have a meal. It's no dinner, just cookies all over the place. It's every kid's fantasy. And it gets to be even more of his fantasy when he realizes that, the house he's living in is actually magical. There's magic shenanigans going on all over the place. There's the stained glass window that's moving. There's an armchair that acts as kind of like a dog. There's a ticking clock in the walls. Well, actually, that part is not intended to happen. See, here's the thing, is that okay, so Jonathan is a warlock. He practices magic, and he just inherited this new, well, not quite new. It's an old mansion from his best pal, his former magician partner, played by Kyle MacLachlan, who apparently turned evil. And right before he left, he made a skeleton key. He started summoning the dead, and he left a magical clock lodged in the walls just before he died. And so Jonathan is trying to find this clock and trying to stop it, because it keeps ticking and ticking and ticking, and if it stops ticking, it might do something bad, I guess. He's not too sure. So he's trying to find that. Meanwhile, Lewis is having problems at school. He's trying to impress a bully. There's this girl that fancies him. But before you get too much into that, there's also the whole deal with Jonathan's partner that they have to figure out. What's going on with the clock. What's going on with there's apparently a book of the dead involved. And there's a whole great dynamic between Jonathan and his next door neighbor Florence, played by Cate Blanchett, who is also a magic user, who's also a witch. But they're both kind of like amateurish. They're both, they know quite a bit of magic. They know how to make apparitions and summon energy and make stuff float and all that. But they don't consider themselves great. They know that they can make mistakes, and they're not quite all together. They haven't figured out this mystery of what Kyle MacLachlan is doing with the house here. So they're still trying to figure out that, but there's way too much going on in this movie. Because on top of that, on top of the arcs of Jonathan and Lewis and Florence, you have backstories to all these characters that keep toppling over themselves. You have Lewis seeing ghosts of his dead parents that are trying to lead and guide him. There's a few twists towards the end here of what Kyle MacLachlan's character was actually doing. There's just so much stuff going on that Roth just kind of slows down most of the magic and the whimsy here, to just make kind of like a straight plot here of there's a sinister magician and they got to stop him. That's essentially what it boils down to. And when you discover what his true plans are, they're nothing incredibly clever. It sounds like a kind of like a classic villain scheme of like being dismayed by the world and wanting to change it somehow with magic. including a ridiculous doomsday device that he has here. But the strange thing is that it seems like there's so many cool things to this, and they should work, but they don't quite connect here. And it's mainly because there's a few aspects that hold the film back from being more enjoyable than I think it really could have been a great film, but it's held back by a few things. One of the things I think is the actor who plays Lewis. He's okay in certain scenes, but other times he's just not that good. And specifically, the moments where he's not good at acting is when he has to act emotional. There's a few scenes where he has to break down crying in tears and being very emotional, and he's trying way too hard to push the tears that I almost thought he was faking them to make him as like a joke, because he's a fairly smart kid. I mean, they make him out to seem like, meek and timid, like the nerd in school who has to stand up for himself and learn to not be so meek, so has to try to figure out magic. I don't quite buy it because the actor is having troubles here. The same, and to be fair, Jack Black also has a little bit of trouble here too, because it's weird when the film first starts off. It sounds like he has an accent, like almost kind of like a Southern accent, but then I guess maybe he realized that he's in Michigan, so maybe a Southern accent wouldn't fit in here, so he kind of drops it quickly after that. But that being said, I did enjoy certain aspects of the film. The best aspects, I think, are definitely the chemistry between Jack Black and Cate Blanchett. They have a lot of great exchanges where they're both very witty, they're both very quick, they make snarky comments at one another, and they fire them back, boom, 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 boom. And you just love seeing that stuff. I wish there was more of that. I also wish there was more of, kind of the creepiness going on in the house, where they have to search for the clock, where they have to go through all the different little secret passages and discover all sorts of weird secrets within the house. I wanted more of that. I would have even been cool if they kept going with the plot of Jonathan trying to impress the bully at school, and then trying to get into the good graces with this girl who loves insects, who has a crush on him. But those plots don't actually go anywhere because they take precedence over the Kyle MacLachlan plot. Which, speaking of actors, Kyle MacLachlan, he looks great in this film. He eventually, in the third act, he plays a zombie, and he looks great in all like the zombie makeup attire. He has that look of like a magician and this sinister demonic look in his eyes. But unfortunately, when he's in zombie form, they give him this kind of like demonic altercation to his voice, which really doesn't work at times, especially in the scenes where he's not trying to like shout or be as menacing. It sounds very tinny and robotic, and it's like, and if anyone has seen Twin Peaks, where Kyle MacLachlan has played the character of Bob, they know that he can be intimidating without changing his voice. But then again, this is a kids film, so you have to make it like suitably scary enough for the kids. Most kids might not be scared by Kyle MacLachlan. He's got a decent smile, even if he is covered in all that zombie decaying makeup here. This is one of those films that we've been lucky in these past few years to have a lot of scary Halloween type films meant for families that both kids and adults can enjoy. There's stuff that comes to mind like like The Nightmare Before Christmas, Paranorman. There's tons of other films like that. The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I absolutely adore that. But unfortunately, this is one of those films where I think the kids will probably enjoy this more than the adults, unfortunately. It's not saying that the adults will be bored or that there's anything reprehensible that adults wouldn't like. It's just kind of passive, I think, for adults. Like, if you've seen, like, these whole Magic Apprentice deal, you've kind of been down this route before. You know the deal, you know the score here. But kids, I think, even, like, little kids, like, there's a few scary elements here. There's some demonic pumpkins that vomit pumpkin innards on people. There's some creepy mechanical dolls that try to attack them. Well, they don't really attack. They grab you and they toss you out on your butt. So there's a few creepy aspects here and there, like raising the dead type stuff. But I think, if your kids really enjoyed the Goosebumps movie, and if they can't wait for the Goosebumps sequel to come out this October and they really need something scary, I think there's enough here they'll dig, especially because there's a lot of slapstick and lowbrow humor here as well. In particular, there's a reoccurring gag of a topiary lion that's come to life that it can't stop. It can't stop going to the bathroom, I guess is the best way to say it, outside its litter box. I don't even see the litter box, but you have this green You have this topiary lion come to life that just goes to the bathroom all over the place. So kids are like that. There's a little bit of potty humor here and there. And there is some witty dialogue here and there too that I think adults will dig it. Adults will dig parts of it. In particular, one of my favorite set pieces was when they're attacked by the demonic pumpkins, and Cate Blanchett is using her wand like a shotgun, just exploding pumpkins. That's a cool shot. Like I said, there are tidbits of fun stuff here. I like a lot of the characters here. The story is at least interesting. It's visually beautiful. There's a lot going on here. I just think it's held back by some of the acting, and some of the editing gets a little bit chaotic just because there's so much going on in the story, and we don't get to. It feels like you don't get to experience everything. It feels like most of it's left on the floor. But that being said, like I said, kids are gonna dig it best. Obviously, it's an Amblin production, so if you're familiar with Amblin stuff of like E.T. and the BFG and Super 8 and all that stuff, it's very much in that vein. That I think if kids want a good scare, they'll get it here. But if you're looking for something that will appeal for the whole family, I don't think you'll get it. I think kids will be more entertained by this by adults by a very narrow margin. And I just want to stress that point because it is a pretty damn good